A very common requirement in an SSIS package is to create a file or a folder that has some kind of a time, date, timestamp, month, quarter, year, whatever in the actual name. And it's really common to need to do this. And I thought that I would just do a real quick video on how you can go about doing that. It's really not a whole lot to it. Let me just create us a little project here, create a package. And so let's just say step one, like I'm making up some package, just some ideas here just to give us something to work from here. So let's say that step one, create a local folder based on year dash month name. You can substitute anything you want for year dash month name. Yours could be month name dash year, day of week, whatever. I'm just picking that kind of at random. And then step two, download files from FTP into this folder. And then step three might be to load files using bulk insert, data flow task, etc. Okay, so this is kind of the idea. So where we're going to focus in this particular video is how to do step number one. It's very simple once you've seen it, but perhaps when you are just kind of looking at SSIS, maybe is a little bit tricky. So I've already shown you kind of how to download files and do the bulk insert. Let's just go ahead and do step number one here. Well, the first thing that I will want to do is have a variable that will give me this particular format. So there's actually a couple of things that a couple of different techniques and ways that I could do this. My preferred way would be to, one, create a string variable to store the folder name, and then two, populate the variable using VB or C#. Okay, and then I'll deal with the file system task here in just a second. This would be my preferred way to do this. I think this is the way most people would do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to create myself some variables. So I'll start with just one, and if I need to expand, I can. So folder name, and let's make it a string. And I can input a certain value right now, but in reality we want it to pick up the runtime YYYY month name. So I'm not going to put anything in here. So then my step two would be to drag a script task on here to assign variables to be YYYY dash month name. So let's go ahead and do that. So I used C# in the last video, so this time I'll use Visual Basic. And I need to write to my variable, so I grab the folder name variable, remembering the casing and the name. And then in my script, what I have to do is figure out what that YYYY thing looks like. So I want YYYY dash month name format. So I could do this in a single line of code. I could do this in 3 or 4 lines of code. I can make this culture specific. I can make it run in the local culture. I can make it culture invariant. What I mean by that is it going to say November or is it going to say the Korean word for November, which I'm sorry, but I don't know what that would be. If it's running on a server in Korea, for example, is it going to use the local language or is it always going to say November? Those are choices I have. I'm going to keep it simple. So here's what I'll do. We'll just grab the year as, a year is an integer. So let's just get date time dot now dot year. That returns an integer value, so we've got the year, and then we would say a month name as a string. And this one maybe is not so obvious. If I do this, this will actually specify that I want the month name. So that's how I actually pass that in when I'm working with a date time data type. You can use multiple different, these are called format strings. So you could say, you really could do something pretty easy. You could do DD. You can include hours, minutes with the HH and the SS and the MM and all of that, the lowercase m's. This is fine for me. This just gives you a basic idea of how to do this. And then I need to assign the value of my variable, which, excuse me, it was called, folder name, I think. We'll try. And now I just need to path in the, maybe I could do another one up here, base folder as string equals C : \, and then we'll just string these together, plus year dot to string plus month name. And so we've now assigned the value of our folder name variable. Now, if there is any confusion, if you want to check this out before you go on, I always say, go ahead. It's better to figure it out now than to create a folder that you can't explain to your admins later. So just put that in here. So we're just going to do one of our little pop-ups here. Sister, why am I getting a message here? What did I do wrong here? I don't know what I did, but I know that, dot show. That's all I was missing there. Talking and typing. So close it out here. Now, before I get into the meat of step one, which is actually creating the local folder, let's just go ahead and make sure that what we have is what we want. And it isn't. So I was asked to put the little dash in, and there is no dash. So good thing I took a look at that before I got started. So I go ahead, go back and edit my script to put the dash in. And so plus dash plus month name. Okay. Little concatenation, nothing too challenging. Make sure that we have what we were asked for, and we do. So now I've assigned the value of the variable, and I now need to create this particular folder. So this is actually fairly trivial because all you have to do is take a look at the file system task. If you remember this from chapter 4 when we looked at working with the file system, I say, where is it that I want to do? What is it I'm wanting to do? I want to create a directory. And when I choose create directory, then it says, okay, what do you want to do? If it exists, what do you want to do? Is this stored in a variable? Why, yes, thank you very much. The variable is user folder name. Okay, so I've now used a combination of VB script and the file system task. And, oops. Oh, see, it's picking up. Sorry, I kind of had to think about what it was telling us here. When we told it that the value of the source path variable is what we want to create, it started validating that. And if you remember our discussions of how SSIS validation works, this is actually going to be a VS is broken, and it's not going to allow us to continue with the package. If we try to actually run this, we fail, and it's because you're using the variable folder name and it is empty. It's not empty. It's not empty because step one will run and assign the value. So you have two choices right here. You can either give your folder name a default value, or you can just delay the validation of your file system task. And if you delay the validation of your file system task, see it's set to false, then it will allow the script task to run, populate the variable, and then it will apply that to the file system task. So again, I went over here to the properties. I told the delay validation, I changed it from false, which is the default, to true, so that it waits to look for the value in that variable until it actually executes that task. And so we run our package, and we see the value that it's going to create. Let's take a look. Looks like it actually was green. Did it actually create our folder? Yes, sirree, Bob. It does it right there. And so now what we would do, if we were going to continue on developing this particular path, our next step would be to go to the FTP task and drag it on here. Now that we've created the folder, let's now hook up our FTP connection. So, you'd wire it up and then you do your file transfer. What's the local path variable? Yes, I actually want to take and use the folder name variable because that's where we're going to store all of those files. And then you'd probably put in a for each loop for every file that was now in that folder. You would loop through and use the bulk insert to load those. Okay, so dynamically creating this local folder, not that difficult. You will many times, just as an aside and an FYI for working with integration services, there's going to be many times where you start out with a script task because you want to do things like populate variables, start timers, do some logging, change values of a property based on given conditions, values of certain variables. So this is actually a good pattern to be familiar with. And I think I'm going to go ahead and stop here. And in the next video, let's come back and talk about expressions and data types.